everyone, and welcome to Oracle WebCenter in Action, an ongoing series with a partner and a customer where we get to dive into some of the details of what a customer is actually doing to maximize their investment in WebCenter. I'm Mark Brown. I'm a Senior Director in the WebCenter team. And before we get started with School Specialty and Redstone, I'm going to go through a few slides on how WebCenter can change the digital business. So the first question is, what is a digital business? Digital is embracing the technology that's out there. We've been paying our bills by computer for a long time, so when we talk about the digital business, it's taking that technology and going to the next level with it, getting beyond just paying the bills. It really is around embracing the customer, engaging them in a conversation, employees, partners, taking that next technology step to improve everyone's experience when they deal with you. It is going back and looking at some of those operational things. Are we still pushing papers up from one desk to another? Are we still making decisions based on printed reports that come out once a week? With these kind of three areas, we can certainly increase our profits and to meet our customers' ever-changing needs. So how do we enable the digital business? Well, we start with the digital experience. And that is everything a customer, a partner, employee knows about us as an organization. Everything from what's on the website to what they get in customer support to what they get when they walk in the front door. Everything has to be consistent and coherent. It means managing content in a way that makes sense contextually. Having all the content in one place and in a giant folder with no hints as to this is a knowledge-based article or this is a customer support article or this is a data sheet for a new offering isn't very meaningful. And it's even less meaningful to customers, but it's not meaningful to employees either. So you need to manage content at the point that it's being used and when it's meaningful, and we call that context. And then the last piece is modifying business practices and creating business processes that are easily changed by the business, and as the business demands change, the process can be changed. It's not a rework, it's a modification. It's changing a parameter versus implementing a new process. And the two pieces of the puzzle from Oracle that make this possible is WebCenter and BPM, otherwise known as Business Process Manager. And the reason those are so important is WebCenter spans the engagement side. It touches the customers, whether it's a portal for customer self-service, whether it's WebCenter site for the .com presence or integration into the e-commerce presence or the customer support. All those areas are where the engagement happens. And now that you have the customer engaged or the employee engaged, how do you take advantage of that information that they're providing you or what you already know about them? You're reaching back into other systems, the CRM system, the customer support system, the ERP, and you're pushing information into those systems, pulling information out to create a coherent, contextual point of interaction. And BPM is a key element of that. Happy to introduce School Specialty and how they improve their order processing with WebCenter. And we're joined by Redstone Content Solutions, who actually did the implementation. With that, I'll let the speakers introduce themselves.
Yes, thank you, Mark. My name is Scott Smith with School Specialty, and I am the middleware systems engineer here, was part of the team that helped to integrate this with the Redstone.
Hi, this is Jim Lorig. I was a senior business analyst on what we call our business services team. One of the areas that we support is our contact centers, which this solution was for. I worked with our vice president of customer care and our division's customer care manager as the primary sponsor and contacts for the project. I was also responsible for organizing the business case and the project funding request.
And my name is John Klein. I am co-founder of Redstone Content Solutions. And our firm works with School Specialty to increase business agility, profit, and enable growth.
We'll do a quick overview of the companies, and then we'll walk through 4 different keys that you've identified for improving order processing. We'll have a brief demo, and then Redstone will follow up with an offering. Let's hear about School Specialty.
We are in Greenville, Wisconsin. At School Specialty, we provide innovative products and programs to the educational marketplace. We currently have about 1,300 employees, over 90,000 school customers, and I think we're upwards of almost 100,000 products that we have in our offering today.
Business objectives for this project is actually a mixture between our customer care vice president's goals along with IT's goals as far as a solution standpoint. So what we were really looking for was a solution that offered excellent capabilities in an integration space, because what we were really talking about for the majority of the transactions were attachments to emails that eventually impact the process running in EBS. We have a current document management system in one part of our company, but we found that solution lacking from the standpoint of if we wanted to grow the footprint, it would have been very cost prohibitive to add the additional licenses. We already had experience with WebCenter content, and we thought it had the capabilities to provide the solution that we were looking for, including low install footprint because we were already up and running with it. It is definitely leveraging the existing software that we have. From a user standpoint, single sign-on authentication, so they're using the same types of passwords and log usernames to get in access to the system. Last thing, and very important, is staying compliant, whether it's SOX or PCI. WebCenter looked to be the right solution that would meet our objectives. Some of the challenges that we faced, and one of the reasons the project was proposed is, we were taking electronic orders that were printed in order to process them. Think about that. We're receiving documents electronically, and we're printing them for processing. We've been paying bills electronically for a long time. Why should we, in this world where we're, looking for green solutions, be taking documents that we're receiving and printing them for processing? So that was one of the challenges. Along with that, there's a lot of lost time when you print out documents. You have to manually sort those documents and then distribute them. They get distributed by batches sitting on associates' desks. So one of the challenges that our senior management had was understanding on a weekly basis what is the backlog of purchase orders that we've received that haven't been processed. And as you can imagine by just what I described, in order to gather that, sometimes you had to go back to each person's desk and look to see what they had on their desk not entered.
So I'd like to talk about what our target solution was. We wanted to be able to replace that manual process and that paper-based process with something that would keep the order in an electronic means, would allow for that electronic order to be flowed through the process, routed into our skill-based routing system to allow for distribution to order entry folks. From there, they needed to be able to have quick and immediate access to these electronic documents to enhance their capability to do the order entry and for any exception handling that may have been routed to them during the communication of the order. So we were able to replace the manual paper-based order by utilizing WebCenter Content's workflow and by utilizing folios within that system to store the content in a logical manner that allowed all of the documents related to an order to be stored together. The additional thing that was there related to the PCI compliances, there was an occasional need for these documents to be redacted as they came in if they contained sensitive customer information. So that's where we looked at the addition of the AutoView Office ViewLink system that allowed us to do some redaction of those documents if needed.
So as SSI's chosen partner, Redstone is a recent Oracle Platinum partner. We focus exclusively on WebCenter, content, sites, and portal. We have an award-winning custom training practice. We're an Oracle-certified training delivery partner, and we've been working with the WebCenter technology since 1998. Current staff started the Stellent Channel Partner Program in the U.S. Stellent has become WebCenter Content and now backends WebCenter Portal. Our role in School Specialty's recent success was quite diverse. We helped them understand what was and was not possible with WebCenter, and we proved that, starting first with a proof of concept that enabled the business owners to actually see how the solution would work, and ending with post-go-live support and software assurance. We brought an innovative Oracle solution to the table that provided content redaction capabilities, and out-of-the-box integration with WebCenter content. We automated the creation of folios during content check-in and/or added new content to an existing folio.
We talked about all these things at the top level, so let's dive in and go a little deeper. The manual processes are a part of everybody's life, so where do we take them for the new solution?
It's pretty obvious that within this process we were fairly manual. Again, we were not able to get quick information and turn it around as far as what our backlogs were. The process as it stood was fairly error-prone. So what we were able to do was actually create a web-based solution, and it utilized familiar tools. The people were familiar with what they were using. Everyone knows how to move around in a web-based solution today. It wasn't unfamiliar. We also had integrated Outlook into the solution, so those types of things were easy and recognizable for our users to use. And since the orders were already coming in electronically, we kept them electronic and allowed the users to not have to have that transition to actual physical or a hard copy version of things to route around the system, and we were able to electronically workflow things through. And then to be able to have that integration, like I said, between Microsoft Office and WebCenter content using the desktop integration made for an easy transition.
The manual collection and reporting of orders, order entry, and backlog data has now been eliminated. Orders are now electronically routed. All supporting documents are associated with the sales order form, and we're able to provide more timely visibility of order data. All customer data is visible to staff, allowing for a more integrated customer experience. We've seen quite a number of benefits in terms of paper expense, print cartridge expense, off-site paper document storage, document shredding and disposal expense, and lastly, desktop scanner replacement expense.
So those are great examples of a couple of things that I mentioned earlier. One was the idea of context. This order document is now in the context of the order entry entered into eBusiness Suite, and it's eliminating some of these manual steps, which we know can become error-prone from the very beginning. Okay, so now we've got the order in automatically. How can we streamline the order process itself?
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind that the order process doesn't stop from the order being entered into the system. We were able to take the order coming into our building, which was electronic through Microsoft Outlook. If redaction was required, we had the tool integrated to be able to redact those documents and then check them in. And the beautiful thing was the first document that got checked in then was automatically created a folio within the WebCenter content system. Any subsequent documents that were on that order could be checked into that same folio. That folio then creates a permanent record of the initial documents that came into the system. The continued workflow from there was that through the metadata on the folio, workflow was triggered to send it to the skills-based routing system. And from there, the order entry associate was able to bring up the documents, utilize those documents for doing the order entry into the EBS system, and then after that, they were able to go update the metadata for that folio with the order number, and that allowed for an additional service to be kicked off that integrated that folio URL that gave someone direct access to those documents, and that URL was in turn placed into the order notes on the order header of the EBS system. This sewed everything together nicely for our order associates.
Outlook is integrated with WebCenter content via Oracle Desktop. This capability provides check-in of content directly from a secured email account. A folio is created in WebCenter content during the check-in of the initial piece of content for an order. The solution also provides for the check-in of additional content. When the check-in and processing are complete, a status update triggers an email. The email is routed to the appropriate customer care associate based on skill set captured in the metadata, which was gathered during content check-in. Oracle AutoView Office and ViewLink integration are used for redaction, highlighting, and/or annotation if required. When a sales order has been created in Oracle e-Business Suite, the folio status is updated again. This kicks off a process whereby the folio ID and a URL are added to a sales order table in Oracle EBS, and the final folio status is automatically set. EBS is updated through an Oracle SOA service. The folio status values and associated date timestamps drive the on-demand backlog and exception reporting that are used to manage the order entry process.
So again, we have another example of not just focusing on the ingestion, if you will, of the orders and improving the experience from that perspective, but we actually took a look at the life cycle of the order and wanted to make sure that things were being done during order entry, the additional metadata and the ease of creating the order, so that the rest of the solution could take off and run. This is another great example of where I started in the introduction. So the next piece, obviously, then, now you've got the order in, how do you integrate it into the necessary systems? There's always more than one that has to be integrated.
The obvious use of the tools that Redstone Content Solutions provided, the fact that WebCenter content has the desktop integration and the ability for that to seamlessly interact with WebCenter content. That didn't require any what I would call services-related development. That was out-of-the-box integration. There were two things that required integration. One was the routing of the order to the skills-based routing system, the ability to let the skills-based routing system know what the requirements were for the order so it could be routed appropriately. And that was handled by the generation of an email. It was kicked off by a component which the experts at Redstone were able to develop for us. The additional integration was getting the actual URL for the folio into the header of the order. And that was simply calling a service that was developed by our SOA developers internally, and the Redstone content people called that service and sent the URL off, and it was integrated into the order header using that service that was written in-house.
Adobe Acrobat Pro was considered for content redaction, highlighting, and annotation. We ultimately decided against it, not only from an additional cost perspective, but also from School Specialty's desire not to require the users learn a new tool. The tools we ultimately selected work together: Oracle Desktop, WebCenter Content, AutoView Office and ViewLink integration, Oracle SOA, and eBusiness Suite.
I think that one of the most important things that you touched on is this idea of integration doesn't always mean integrating into back-end systems. It means integrating into the user's worldview, if you will, or the user's comfort zone. And by picking standard tools, you were able to do that, which leads us to the fourth of the pieces, which is standardized technology and standardizing technology and standard technology. So let's hear more about that.
School Specialty has been an Oracle shop for a long time. We utilize Oracle e-Business Suite for a number of years. We recognize the strength of the entire middleware suite of products and realize that utilizing the services-oriented architecture, we can provide for ourselves the strength of integration that Oracle brings to the table today. We had already been using WebCenter content to a limited degree for some website and for providing curriculum into the classroom. And to take that utilization and Redstone's expertise in this area, it just looked like a natural fit where we could utilize products that we were already very familiar with and already had a fairly significant investment in.
The in-production order processing solution that we are discussing today has subsequently been extended to the School Specialty HR department. Secure employee content now resides in WebCenter content, further reducing cost and improving access for School Specialty.
Fitting in with the end user's experience with the skill set that's on site allows for a more rapid adoption and a more effective solution. So why don't we take a look and see what the end system actually looks like?
Okay, so we're going to put it all together based on the discussion that you just heard. And what you're seeing right now, it's not the actual live production system, but it's a pretty good mock-up that will give you a very good sense of what's going on. We're doing this on our test instance, and what we did was create a secure mailbox for documents for customers to email into. We also have a fax server and a scanning solution as part of this overall solution. So customers can send orders in any manner, and they do get routed through the entire solution that we're talking about. We just do the check-in to WebCenter through a little different method. So in here, simulation again, we have an email that was received from Akron Public Schools. When you have WebCenter content installed in Outlook, you have this additional tab. And from there, it's a simple step of saying check-in mail item. So as discussed earlier, we created these metadata fields. And these metadata fields were derived based on working with customer care leadership and their team and really finding the key data that drives the process. A customer that places orders with us sometimes provides an order form that they've received from a sales rep, sometimes a formal purchase order along with that. They can send graphics files. They can send any number of files. So the person that's doing the check-in is responsible for identifying the types of orders or types of documents being received and the skill set that ultimately will need to handle the processing. And that's necessary to capture upfront for our skill-based routing solution. We also capture other pieces of information like general geography, as well as a subtotal that's usually on the order form or the purchase order, and that is used in the backlog reporting. So I'm going to show how we do the check-in and get the folio created, and I'm going to check in a couple documents and then talk a little bit about that as we go through it. Automatically comes up based on the document title that's in the email. Even if that is sufficient, you can leave it the same or you can rename it. Content type, this happens to be an order form. We are going to create a new folio as we do this. Customer number, we fill in. We could have built a service to retrieve the customer name from EBS, but in the interest of time and the timeline we had on this project, we elected not to. So we do have a step of entering this information. And that is entered there so that we can use it as part of a search later on. The sales consultant we also did not pull forward. The sales order number we'll leave blank. We'll talk about that later. Put in an order total that came off of the order form. The skill set is a drop-down. Region is also a drop-down. And that's basically how we are organized within the business and teams. So teams can work these orders. If we wanted to capture any information from the email, we put it in here, and then any other comments that someone that's receiving this process or these documents in the next step may need to know about it. Lastly, we fill in a requested delivery date from our customer, and this is used in case our entry folks do have a backlog. They can use first in, first out method and sort the information in the skill-based routing based on that date. Okay. At this point, we are checking in. That first check-in, you saw it came back relatively quickly. That is usually in the 1 to 2 second range. And there's actually two things occurring here. You have the metadata that's being captured is actually being used to create the folio, and then it's also tagging that document with that data that we just checked in and associating that document to the folio. Okay, so we select that. It immediately takes you to the next document or the next attachment on the email. This one happens to be a purchase order, so we select that in. And now, in this case, we're not creating a new folio. So we browse, and we have a quick search screen here. That search is searching not only the customer that we entered, but also the title. And we have the customer number, the 333111, as part of the title of the document. You can see that there are multiple folios that exist for this customer. And if you look at the date and time stamp, I can recognize that the one that is in the middle is the one that I just created, so I select that. The rest of this information then is auto-populated based on the previous or the folio information, so they don't have to re-enter this information. And for the most part, there's no reason to change what is entered. So let's select that, check it in. The next one is a JPEG, so it's a it's a graphics file. Select that. We'll do the same step on the folio. Do the same selection. Everything else checks out, and we select it in. Okay. The last piece of content that you can check in through this process then is actually the email itself. This is an optional step. If in the case that the email that I have right now, there was really no text in there, so it's probably not worth checking the content in. But if this email was received from a sales rep or a customer and it contained information that might be valuable to save, then you'd want to check the email in. So you can either select to check it in or you can cancel out. For this purpose, I will cancel. And you do get a message saying that you failed to check in a piece of content, and that is okay. Now, at this point, what you have is a folio that's checked in a created status. And what we need to do from a process standpoint, you need to say that the folio and the work is ready to start. So we go to a session. Have logged into WebCenter, and we do a search for that content. There's two different ways you can do the search. We have a quick search. Okay, we go back to the folio that we just created. We go into the info and in the content actions. And you can see right now that the folio is in a created status. So everything is basically on hold until we take the next step. Now, the beauty of this is, yes, it's on hold, but it's not sitting on somebody's desk. So if anybody needs visibility, if a sales rep calls up and says, I'm looking for this paperwork, at least we have it captured. We have the content checked in. We just know that the process of order entry hasn't started yet. But when we're ready for starting, we change the status to ready. And we submit that update. What you're going to see immediately here is that the status has changed to sent. And what that is a notification or a visual cue to the person doing the process that the email that contains the URL to the folio has been sent to our skills-based routing system. So it's just a visual cue for them. And then the other thing we put on the screen is this routed date and time so that they know, and in the future, if you need to look, we know that we checked in content and we routed it to our skill-based routing system at that date and time. It's very valuable information if you're troubleshooting an issue or trying to find a document that someone claims they've submitted but hasn't. And if you know immediately that from this point in the process, we've handed it over to skills-based routing. So if there is any question, they should be looking at the skills-based routing system to see what happened at the next point. It got routed to a skills-based routing system, and that system routes based on a skill set that we captured earlier, and it looks for the next available agent to do the order entry process that can handle that skill set. So that happens automatically. And when that agent is available for work, the skills-based routing system can push the work to them, and they essentially receive what is called a contact, and in that contact is the URL to the folio. Okay, so now you have to do a little imagination here, because I didn't want to bore you with order entry, but the skills-based routing system has given it to an agent. The agent generally has two screens in front of them. The skill-based routing system's on the left-hand side. They access the link to the folio. They do the order entry, and when they're done with the order entry in EBS, they have a sales order number. Because they have the folio open, this is the screen that they would be seeing: order entry form, purchase order, possibly additional instructions in the graphics file. They would see this screen. They would have the order entry form up on the left-hand side. They would enter the order, and when they're all ready, they go back to the content info, content actions. They do an update, and now they fill in the sales order number. Triggering of the sales order, or the entry of the sales order in this screen. Notice that this is in the sent status. We're going to submit update. The status has changed again. That's part of our workflow, our process. Again, the visual cue to the order entry person. What this means is we've sent the data for the URL for this folio to the sales order that they just created. And that process, as Scott mentioned earlier, is a middleware service along with a EBS concurrent request that's looking for the data, and it puts that URL as an attachment on the sales order screen. So now what you have to do is imagine a little bit later, and now I've switched hats to being a customer care agent within our company, and a customer calls up and says, I have a question on my purchase order. So the agent navigates to the order search screen, and the customer is giving them their purchase order number. Searching for the order. They find the order, open it up, and you see that they have an attached there. The attachment icon has a little Post-it note through it. So that's a signal that there are attachments for the sales order. We go to the attachment screen, and what we have here, we place all of these links or the URLs for the folios into a sequence 11 with a description of folio docs. So they understand pretty quickly that they do have an attachment to the folio resident in their sales order. They can click on that attachment, open the document, and they were taken to this screen. They open it up, and now they can answer questions for the customer based on the content that's in the folio. Additionally, sometimes the customers make these inquiries via email. They can do the same type of research that I just showed you, and they could respond to that customer and, if necessary, capture the email response as an additional piece of information in the folio. So it gives them a lot of flexibility. In the overall business process, there's many times where we receive the graphics file or a copyright waiver at weeks and sometimes months after the initial purchase order. So the ability to check in additional documents into the folio is very, very helpful to the overall business. And again, the beauty, Scott mentioned it earlier, it keeps all of the documents together so that when there's questions in the future, there's an association to a single reference being the folio, and it just saves a lot of time. Previously, they're storing these documents on a network drive and hoping that everybody names them, someone similar, and puts them in the right folder, and using just basic file searching tools if they can't find a document. Here you have a much more robust ability to find documents quickly across multiple resources in the organization, doing a variety of roles. The last thing I'll mention on this is we architected this solution in anticipation of the next department's interaction. And the next department is actually creating the physical product that all these documents relate to, and it's a graphics department. So we wanted the central repository so the next step in the process can also use this information, use the files, and when they make revisions, it's all in a central location.
Thank you, Jim. That was a very interesting demo. And John, you were part of the team to pick technology to solve the business problem, not the other way around. So what brought you to WebCenter?
As you have seen and heard today, WebCenter content is at the heart of this solution. It provides enterprise document management capabilities. Oracle Desktop eases order entry. Email-based workflow routes content to the appropriate customer care associate. AutoView Office, ViewLink, Oracle SOA, and EBS integrations transform standalone technology into an engaging digital experience that provides measurable value for school specialty.
In addition to that, Oracle WebCenter was the right solution for school specialty. Users' utilization of a web-based tool was very natural. The integration to everything we do today related to EBS and SOA services architecture were a natural. The integration of the workflow, and it was so easy to support. We've had it here for a long time, and our users are familiar with it, and there was no pushback from the user community to integrate this. The improved work queue visibility and management reporting. One of the enhancements that was made by Redstone Content Solutions was the ability for a one-button instantaneous look at what our backlog was. Management was ecstatic at that. Before, it took days and a lot of effort to put together where we stood on a backlog and what the dollar value of that backlog was. It hadn't been entered in our order entry system. Today, it's a one-button push, and they have the total value and knowledge of where we stand. That knowledge has increased our ability to understand where we stood and where our business was going in the weeks to come. The cost savings that we've utilized on eliminating the manual paperwork and the increase in productivity for each of our users has been tremendous. We were very thankful for what Redstone was able to bring as a solution to school specialty.
Mark, we actually have two offers to present to the audience today. Please visit the URL on the screen, and we ask you to provide us with your contact information. One lucky winner will receive a no-cost WebCenter system health check, which includes the review, analysis, and documentation of best practice recommendations. We also invite you to visit the download page of our website for a wide variety of no-cost components that can enhance your WebCenter deployment.
Okay, and thanks everyone for your time and energy in putting together the presentation. You can see John's email address is there to take him up on either of those offers, as is mine on the bottom. And good marketing there, having the orders email address for the school specialty folks. The other thing I'll ask everyone is if you want to keep in touch, you want to hear more of these sorts of solutions, maybe more specific things that we post on our blog, hear what's coming up in terms of other marketing activities or education activities, sign up for the community, and there's 5 or 6 different ways to do that here. So with that, we'll call a wrap to this edition of WebCenter in Action, and we thank you for your time and attention, and of course, if there's any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.